Hey boos, welcome back to the Shadee Nomad podcast where beauty, travel, and culture collides, no filter needed. I'm your host Tamara. If you haven't met me before, it's a pleasure to meet you. And before we go ahead and get started, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with a friend. Thank you. Today's episode is a solo one, so it's just me and you. We locked in. But we're going to be diving a little deeper on some of the life lessons that I've learned by living abroad and on the road. Travel has been one of my greatest teachers. So today I want to pull that curtain back a bit and talk about just some of the many lessons that I have learned while living abroad when it comes to confidence, faith, having trust in God, trusting myself, as well as just learning more about myself, especially in the stillness. So let's just go ahead and get into it. So let's talk about the leap. The moment that I decided to leave corporate, I literally had less than $6,000 to my name. But I really had this big desire to go pursue a life that I knew that I wanted to be proud of. I didn't have a trust fund, y'all. I didn't have a backup plan. But what I did have instead is I had God, I had grit, and I had a vision, and I had determination. And that leap taught me so much about myself as I went ahead and started my new life living abroad. So I want to just go ahead and dive a little deeper into that. So let's go ahead and talk about the leap. The moment that I decided to leave corporate with literally less than $6,000 to my name and go pursue a life that I could actually feel proud of. When I tell y'all I did not have a trust fund, I already told you guys how much money I had in my savings account, and I really didn't have a backup plan. However, what I did have was I had God, I had grit, I had determination, and I also had a vision. The leap taught me to bet on myself and to trust in provision that I haven't seen yet. And let me tell y'all something, the moment that you tell God, the moment that you put it out there, the moment that you say it out of your mouth, like, this is what I want to do, God, I'm so serious about this, I have to do this. The way God came through, the way God aligned all my steps for me, He literally sat there and helped me. I didn't have any way to make money. I was trying to figure that out. And then it dawned on me that I could teach English abroad. So what did I have to do? I had to find a school, a TEFL school, to learn how to teach English as a foreign language to other students. So I had to find my first destination point. For some reason, God put it on my heart to start off in Prague. So with Prague, God helped me find literally a TEFL school. And from that TEFL school, I didn't have a place to stay. So I'm like, okay, I'm about to move to Prague with nowhere to stay. God came through again. Reached out to the school, said, hey, I don't have anywhere to stay. Do you guys have any recommendations or any other resources? And they said, hey, let's link you up with somebody that we know. And then she ended up renting a room out for me the whole time that I decided to stay in Prague. When it came to booking my flight, my one-way flight, it wasn't as bad as far as the financial burden as I thought it was going to be. Literally just sitting up there and being able to sell damn near most of my stuff out of my New York City apartment and keeping the things that I absolutely needed and storing it in my uncle's house for free, so I didn't have to worry about paying a storage bill while I was overseas. What else? Just having friends coming through and supporting me and just giving me advice and pouring into me, especially times that I had self-doubt. And just also just getting, how can I say this, getting encouragement from the people that I least expected. And I felt like anytime that self-doubt crept in, God would send somebody to come talk to me or just drop a little nugget in my ear just to keep me moving forward, just to make sure that I got on that plane and I started my journey. So again, I had to have faith in something that I could not see yet, something that I have not experienced yet, but God came through all the way, y'all, all the way. I still remember the moment that I booked that one-way flight to start this journey, y'all. I was actually at work and I kept looking at the flight, reconfirming everything. Okay, it's going to the destination that I needed to go to. I actually started my round the world journey in Barcelona, and I ended up living in Prague as my first place to stay. However, it was just like everything in me was just like, okay, let's do it. But I was so scared to press that button, and because I was so nervous. I was terrified. I ain't gonna hold y'all. However, I was so excited. But once I went ahead and booked that flight, everything was real. There was no going back. It was like, I'm doing this and I just have to do it whether I was a chicken or not. So yeah. And getting myself emotionally prepared for it was a journey within itself, because you go through the motions, right? You have your self-doubt, you have your excitement, you have the days like you're like, I absolutely could do this. You have the other days like, what the hell am I thinking? I'm somebody that tends to over prepare a lot. So I definitely overpacked. If I told y'all how many times I packed my suitcase, I got like all my luggage and condensed it as much as I could. It was a whole mess, y'all. I ain't gonna hold y'all. I would literally be at work printing off any Nomad checklist or moving abroad checklist that I could find, and I was just comparing everything, and it just came to the point, it was like, Tam, you're going to drive yourself crazy. However, you know, God still went ahead and saw me through. He would again send people to drop those nuggets for me. And I said I was ultimately going to do this, so I had no other choice but to move forward. But one of the biggest things that I took away from that, you guys, was by booking that one-way flight, I was finally giving myself the yes to live my life on my terms for the first time ever in my life. And that was something that felt so exhilarating, so freeing, and I was extremely proud of myself. So that's a big purpose of why I wanted to share that experience with you, because it just helps you break away from those misconceptions that you have of yourself, or those fears that you have of yourself. Because I was no longer listening to the naysayers. I wasn't succumbing to other people's fears and projections. I remained determined, and that's something that I'm very proud of myself for, always being a very determined individual. And even if that meant for me to do this being scared, which again I was. However, in return, God showed me what it was like to move in with faith in motion. So let's just dive a little deeper into that as well. Let's just go ahead and get a little real. Sometimes we think healing only happens in therapy or in stillness, but for me, my biggest breakthroughs was in motion. And what do I mean by that? By moving and visiting new cities, meeting new people that became like family, even if it was just temporarily, experiencing different cultures. But another thing is the opposite happened as well. It taught me to slow down and smell the roses. It taught me to slow down and just live in the moment. It taught me to slow down and just like revel in the experience and just feel it as an experience before moving on to the next one. And it also taught me just to slow down and to just be, if that makes sense. So travel in a way, it stripped me of the distractions, but it gave me a mirror of who I was. And if you guys remember from the last episode, and if you haven't watched it, please do, where I was talking with Samaya about traveling it forces you to sit there and meet yourself. And that's exactly what ended up happening for me. And what do I mean by that? I'm gonna give you guys a quick example. When I moved to South Africa, I moved to Cape Town in particular. Now I had visited Cape Town before, again, as a solo traveler, but come see me and come live with me is two different things, right? And I remember by the time I made it to Cape Town, I was about 6 months into my round the world journey, but things had changed. I was on a momentum like while I was living in Europe. I was on a momentum while I was living in Asia. But like when I got to South Africa, everything slowed down. Like my work slowed down because I couldn't work without a work visa, which I wasn't going to be able to obtain while living in South Africa. I had to rely solely on my online freelance work, and that had just completely slowed down. So although I did have money saved from Asia, I wasn't making a lot of money when I was in South Africa, if that makes sense. To travel to other countries like I was doing while I was living in Asia and Europe, that wasn't necessarily the case for me. While living in South Africa, traveling to other countries within the continent was quite expensive compared to the other continents I had lived on. And I just remember like my first roommate situation just wasn't working out. And by the time I got fully settled, I had a girlfriend that came to visit me from New York, and we had a great time. But then after she left, I just felt so lonely, and I also didn't realize I was homesick either. But I just remember feeling so lonely, and I would just, sometimes just all I was doing was just like wallowing in the bed, always in and out of sleep, browsing social media, browsing YouTube. And I don't want to say feeling sorry for myself, but I was just very depressed. I was crying a lot to myself, and I was just kind of feeling like maybe I should not have done this, or maybe I should end this journey early, right? However, one of the things that I realized that I needed to help turn everything around for me is just understanding, being in that stillness, accepting it for what it was. And I actually had a Lover of Shades blog at the time. So I wrote an article, a blog post, if you will, about being depressed and about being homesick, living abroad. And it made me realize, I'm like, the only person that's going to pull me out of this is me. So I decided at that point in time, I said, wait, I have about maybe a little over a month left in South Africa. I need to make sure that I'm having a good time. Do not waste the moment. Do not waste your time here. So by changing my mindset and shifting it to where we're going to think positive, we're going to enjoy ourselves, we're going to live in the moment, we're going to find the beauty even in the smallest points, that changed everything for me. Because guess what? I started to pick back up clients. I started to have more students that were interested in me, returning new students, etc. So I started to get business again for my freelance. I also was able to, I took myself out a lot. Like I would go visit V&A waterfront. I would go do like different little excursions if I could afford it, go to the wineries, etc. But it started to change my mindset, and it lifted my spirit, and it lifted my mood, and it made me ready for the later half of my around the world journey. And one thing that I now realize from my South Africa experience, by going through that homesickness and that depression, was that it started to jumpstart how I approach my mental health. So although I didn't start that right away, it was like a couple years after I had finished traveling doing my around the world journey. I'm now in how I approach my mental health now is like I'm now in therapy, have been in for years, and I always make sure to check in with myself and make sure that I'm still feeling and being the best person that I could be in the moment. So this, again, just so much that I have learned about myself while living abroad. So let's just go ahead and continue with our conversation. However, on the flip side, I also had a lot of positive breakthroughs. So one thing about being far away from home, and I'm talking about not just a couple states away, internationally far away from home, is that it forces you to bring out your inner boss. And what do I mean by that? You learn to advocate for yourself. You're going to fix things on the fly. You're going to ask for help, and you're just going to figure it out. And you know why? Because you ain't got no other choice. And travel made me realize that I'm not fragile, but in fact, I'm equipped. So let's dive a little deeper so y'all can understand what I mean by that. I'm going to tell y'all another quick story. While I was living in Prague, I ended up traveling out to Reykjavik, which is Iceland, to meet up with a friend who was coming from the States to meet me there. There was no direct flight from Prague to Reykjavik, so I had to take an overnight bus from Prague into Berlin, Germany, and then took a direct flight from Germany into Reykjavik. Now, what ended up happening is when it was time for me to return, I missed my flight. And y'all, it is not like the United States. They literally were like, hey, there's no more flights for the rest of the day going to Germany. We don't know what to tell you. I guess you're going to have to stay here another day, and you're going to have to book a brand new flight if you want to go back to Germany tomorrow. And that was an absolute no-no for me. I could not stay there overnight. So naturally, internally, I started to panic. I couldn't even get through security because I had no valid ticket. So I'm just literally sitting like in the small little lobby area at the airport, just trying to figure this out, phone dying and all. And as I'm really starting to panic more and more internally, again, and this is like 8 o'clock in the morning, maybe a couple hours later, I ended up meeting a guy who came, and he was kind of in the same boat as me, but not really. He was ending his trip to Iceland early, and he was actually a flight attendant for a major international airline, and he left his car in Budapest in Hungary. So he needed to hurry up and find a flight to Hungary so he could get his car, and he was actually ironically from Prague, and he was going to be driving back into Prague. Once I learned that there was a flight to Hungary, I came up with the quick ideas. I'm sitting up here researching how can I get to Prague from Budapest. I found that there was a few reasonably, affordable buses, and then maybe even I could catch a flight if need be from Budapest back into Prague. That flight didn't leave until about 9 or 10 that night, so I went ahead and booked that flight to Hungary so I could get inside the airport and charge my phone. And as I'm charging my phone, me and him is just talking all day. Like, mind y'all, this is like 10 in the morning till probably about 9, 10 at night, so about 12 hours. We're just talking all day. And, that's how I learned that he was going to be driving back into Prague. He actually offered a few times. He's like, hey, since you're flying to Budapest, I could actually take you into Prague because I got to go home myself. And y'all know, I'm like, I'm going to think about it. I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, hell no. But as I'm sitting up here, considering my options, I'm just like, okay, at the end of the day, if I get back into the mainland, I could figure out how to get home from there. So by the time we ended up boarding that flight late at night, y'all, I just kept praying on it. God got my steps. And ultimately, y'all, I ended up taking that ride with him. We drove from Budapest, went through Slovakia, and then entered Czech Republic, now known as Czechia. And it was an amazing time, and it was an amazing experience and it taught me ultimately, like, moving on faith, moving with grit, moving with trusting your gut, and just having faith that everything's going to work out. It will work out. So that's what I mean about, like, just learning how to let go through motion for me. Like, it was very sacred to me. It was very sacred to me. And that's something that I will always carry for the rest of my life. I also learned that one of my biggest superpowers is determination. And though I didn't realize it at the time, my faith and ultimately, of course, God really did carry me through. And that's like, really, to God be the glory. To God be the glory, to God be the glory. And one thing about me is I've always been resilient. I've been through a lot in my life. However, for me, once I slowed down, I accepted this situation for what it was, and I was open and willing to pivot. The way everything worked out. And those are, again, lessons that I still take with and hold near and dear to me to today. And this is also how I now approach my business, my relationships, as well as my content creation. So again, these are lessons that I really took near and dear to my heart. But there was other things that I had to learn about myself too as I went throughout my journey. And some of those was learning more about identity, beauty, as well as belonging abroad. So what do I mean by that? Being a Black woman abroad, as you already know or could imagine, it comes with layers. How you're seen, how you see yourself, how you navigate spaces where you might be the only one of you there. And for some people, that is very restrictive and, in fact, very scary. And I understand that. However, for me, surprisingly, it brought freedom. It really did. It brought freedom. I wasn't bound by U.S. standards. I could redefine beauty, identity, and femininity on my own terms. And what do I mean by that? When I lived in Asia, something that I realized I had to quickly do was really lean into my networking skills that I didn't realize I had at that time. And I had to be open to pivot, and I had to be open to thinking quick on my feet. Why? Because one thing that I quickly realized when I moved to Asia, I have never visited that continent before moving there, is that maybe about, and I'm not even trying to be dramatic, maybe about 85 to 90% of their skincare products, and I'm talking about lotions, deodorant, soap, etc., had bleaching elements in it. The culture embraces bleaching their skin and lightening their skin by any means possible. And for me, I wasn't trying to do any of that. So again, God stepped in for me, and one of the things that I was able to get blessed with through the networking is my as I was getting settled and trying to get myself established while living in Vietnam, Saigon in particular, I ended up meeting a young lady, and she already had an apartment, and I ended up renting a room from her, and come to find out that she was originally from Paris. She's Vietnamese, but she was originally from Paris, but she had moved and actually transferred her job out to Saigon to continue her job or her career with L'Oreal. So because we were roommates and I was explaining to her my situation, like, hey, I can't use any of these products You've been out here a little longer than me. Do you have any recommendations? She was like, oh girl, I work for L'Oreal. So what she was doing was she was going, as she was at work, she would bring me home like gratis products. So soaps, lotions, things of that nature. So I didn't have to worry about any bleaching components touching my skin or altering my skin complexion. That was a really, really big thing because again, I get to identify life on my own terms. Also, while living in Asia, I learned about Korean skincare. Now Korean skincare is very popular today, but it's been popular in Asia for a long time. And by living out there and having more freedom out there and living a softer life, I was able to take my time to test out different products. And one of the brands that I fell in love with, and although I don't have them right now at this very moment, I still do use them in today's time, is Innisfree, more specifically their green tea line. And it came to the point that I ended up buying a bunch of products just to last me throughout the rest of my around the world journey and for my rest of my time traveling abroad. And you guys don't even understand, like I have hormonal acne, I do have adult acne, I have hyperpigmentation, and those products helped. The green tea line in particular helped like calm down my acne breakouts, like just calm down any like irritation and inflammation. And it just also helped like overall with the appearance and like health of my skin. And that was something that was just so reaffirming to me, because when you feel good about yourself and you feel confident, you move with more confidence, you move with more power, you're within your power, you're within your flow. So that was something that I will always take away from me. Basically, when I was living abroad and immersing myself into different experiences, learning different cultures, what their beauty norms are, teaching them some of my beauty norms that I've, brought from America, etc. It just reaffirmed my love for beauty, and that's why beauty will always be a part of Shadee Nomad's story, as well as Lover of Shades. However, another thing that I've learned while being on the road abroad is redefining what soft life is. So as you know, right now, everybody's throwing around the term soft life. And however, for me, it's not just about like candles or luxury or days off. For me, it was more about emotional peace. It was more about me choosing myself. It was me deciding not to suffer through survival mode anymore, if that makes sense. And for me, ultimately, my soft life, how I equate soft life, is freedom. And moving abroad gave me permission to do that. I also mentioned this in the last episode while talking with Samaya, so check that out again if you haven't. One of the biggest lessons that I have learned while living abroad is that you don't need a lot of stuff to be happy. And I realize even in today's time, when I have too much stuff, I feel bogged down, I feel stressed out, I feel overwhelmed. However, when I live with less stuff or I have less possessions, I feel lighter, I feel more free, I feel more focused, I feel more like of myself, like I'm in my power. As we know, capitalism makes the world, especially the Western civilization world, go round. However, the cost for that is misery, everyone's misery. And if I'm being honest, I still do get caught up in that from time to time. I do live back home in America now. However, when I catch myself doing that, I always try to give myself grace and just do whatever I need to do to get myself back on track. But if it wasn't for me living abroad and having that opportunity to like live with less possessions, understand what happiness and what freedom really means for me, I wouldn't be able to use those tools to pull myself back into reality or ground myself, shall I say, in today's times, anytime that I feel myself falling off track, if that makes sense. So now I would like to encourage you all, whether you're currently a nomad or not, to define what your version of peace, joy, and freedom is. What is that for you? Is it reading new books? Is it getting out into nature? Is it being by or laying on a beach? Is it staying still in silence? I really want you guys to think about that, because I would love to continue this conversation in the comment section below. So if you are comfortable, please share like your answer in the comment section, and we could go ahead and continue the conversation and hopefully get everyone else engaged to go ahead and participate as well. And don't worry, the Shadee Nomad podcast will always explore this often: the traveling, the healing, the softness. Don't worry, I got y'all. So as we're going to go ahead and wrap up, I really hope that this episode gave you something to think about and something to feel. For me, these lessons didn't come easy. However, they're a part of my journey. And I'm really honored to share this with you guys, because I'm working on just like opening up a bit more and just sharing my experiences and hoping that it resonates and vice versa. And if this did resonate with you, please go ahead and let me know what lesson hit home the most. You could do that by going ahead and dropping that in the comment section below. If you have any questions or want to have a private conversation, please feel free to go ahead and send me a DM. You can find me on all social media platforms at the same user handle, but more specifically TikTok, Instagram, where I'm the most active, Facebook, and of course YouTube at the username Lover of Shades. And please, 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 please share this with somebody who you know is ready to make a move or start to get engaged in this conversation. If you got a friend that keep telling you that they want to move abroad, send them my channel. If you got somebody that's saying, hey, I think that, I'm thinking about traveling a little bit more, go ahead and send them my channel. I want everybody that loves beauty, lifestyle, and travel to please come and engage with this channel. And another thing, I'm going to be dropping a major announcement soon. So please make sure that you're locked in with me, whether it's through here on YouTube, but especially on Instagram if you haven't already, so you could be sure to hear it first, okay? And the very last thing, if you haven't already, please do not forget to subscribe to my channel, so therefore you can make sure you don't miss a single episode, because listen, y'all, we just getting started. So until next time, keep growing, keep glowing, and keep living that life on your terms. The soft life is calling, boo. So don't miss it. And I'm gonna see y'all in the next episode. Bye.